Welcome to the No Show. My name's Andrea Edwards.
And my name is Joe Augustin, and Tim Wade, our third leg in this particular show, sends his apologies. He's busy being, I don't know, a cultural ambassador of some sort in some kind of a stage performance. That's all I know at this stage.
Yeah.
And welcome to the No Show. This it's a show that talks about some of the serious news around the world. It gets really big and heavy, and at the same time we try and do some fun stuff. So I've quietly called it, or I just came up with a term today, which I think kind of it could be something we can run with. It's optimistic despair.
Optimistic
So
despair. Okay.
yeah, and what we also try to do on the show is to bring a wide and varied perspectives as much as possible. So our guest today is someone I kind of met online, been looking at what he talks about, very much about the environment, and he really appreciates nature. He's a PhD and is a research scientist in innovating sustainability solutions for industry, profit, and longevity at the University of New South Wales, Dr. Farshid Pahlivani. I hope I got the name right. It's Farshid Pahlivani,
Yes.
is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, thank you very much for having me in your show.
Great. So yeah, so the show is kind of it's a loose conversation in the sense that we have lots of stuff to get to, but we do also kind of veer off left and right. And I think what I find is the best thing about the show for me is I'm always learning stuff myself about the world as we bring this to you as well. So with all that said, and I know that you've got a hard out today as well, right, Farshid? You have to
Yes.
leave us earlier than we usually end our show. So I think we should get rolling with the show. What do you think, Andrea?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Definitely. So I shared a tweet with you guys that was full of expletives, which I was going to share and sort of censor out the expletives because it's not everyone's cup of tea. But then I just saw another one, which I'm going to read, which you guys haven't seen. And the reason I want to read this is I want to give everyone a sense of the chaos that's going on in the news cycle right now. And I'm overwhelmed by what's going on and have to work really, really hard to sort of navigate the noise and the nonsense from what really matters. And so I can imagine for other people who don't spend as much time doing this as I do, that it's even more overwhelming. So here's one. It says, yesterday was a pretty incredible news week. And I'm presuming that they said that intentionally, a news week, because it does feel like a year of news happens every week or every day these days, right? So here you go. And it said yesterday, which was obviously yesterday in the US, but it's kind of in our news cycle today. VP Kamala Harris did a rally with Oprah. It was a hit. I've seen a little bit of coverage on that. It looked like it was a good thing. Trump said anti-Semitic things to Jewish people at an anti-Semitism event. Trump's anti-Semitic endorsement, who became the NC gubernatorial nominee, Murray Robinson, just got revealed as the black Nazi who loves bisexual sex when he's not preaching against LGBTQ people or getting one of his beloved golden showers while cheating on his wife with her sister. And he got caught on the Ashley Madison cheat on your wife database. Right-wing journalist Olivia Nuzzi revealed an improper personal relationship with RFK Jr. after New York Magazine suspended her. Apparently it wasn't physical. Right-wing propagandist Christopher Rufo also got caught in the Ashley Madison database, looking to cheat on his wife, who he admitted to being an undocumented immigrant from Thailand in a 2018 Facebook post after his years of supporting racial hatred against immigrants. And then the House Republican impeachment machine got torn to bloody shreds in full view of the public, as did their brilliant idea of bringing the people who wrote Project 2025 on to testify. To me, that's one of those tweets that just sort of gives you a big sense of the chaos, the absolute chaos that is going on in the US elections, but it's a global chaos that's going on right now. So hold on to your hats. I don't know how many days we've got until the election in the US. It impacts the world. That's why everyone's paying attention to it. It's going to get worse. It's going to get crazier. We've seen the interference. Joe's going to talk about some of the interference later. But yeah. Joe, P. Diddy.
Well, yeah, PDD and the multiple names that he comes by. I've been actually enjoying watching the news, trying to sort of like introduce him when they talk about him. They have to give you all his aliases and what have you and all that. And they very officially then go on to say that he is being accused of running many of these freak-offs. So picture the news having to describe this and always having the inverted commas around the words freak off. So they're always saying freak off, freak offs, freak offs. Basically, it's debauchery, organized debauchery that that I think has been happening. And if you talk about things like where they get together and have lots of sex and lots of drugs and that kind of stuff, that's basically what it is. But not everybody that is there, the accusation anyway, is there because they want to be there or they were there on totally free terms. So sex trafficking accusations abound. And of course, there's a bunch of stuff as well as we like to say in social media. I think the receipts are there as well because people, many famous people, have been shown to have attended these events. A lot of the evidence that apparently for a while wasn't there have also suddenly shown up again because, well, just because something goes away from the hotel's video servers, it doesn't mean it completely goes away. So there's a famous video that goes around as well right now of Sean Diddy, and they always say allegedly, but it looks like him beating up his ex-girlfriend in a lift lobby at a hotel, and that, you know, the whole idea that first of all that went away and then was discovered and came back again gives it even more of a sour twist. But yeah, so keep a lookout for the updates on what happens with the freak-offs, Sean Diddy and all the names stand accused.
I think you're being much kinder. I think this is going to turn into an explosive event. There's been all sorts of resignations across the entertainment industry, the blackmail, but obviously the trafficking. There's underage accusations with some pretty famous people now, you know. So I think, and obviously Donald Trump, his third association with a sex offender. So it's, I think it's a much bigger story than we're feeling. I've been following one of his former security guards. Oh my God, it's horrible. It's you don't even want to watch these things or listen to some of the videos this guy's got. It's just revolting. But anyway, onto more serious things, Farshid.
Yeah, so we talk about the people and the human aspect. So let's look at our home or planet that we are looking at. So basically, our planet is facing the huge challenge. And in the past few months, there is a lot of things is happening, especially about the global warming and about the environment and temperature. So let's give you some of the numbers so it's basically make more sense. So 1 in 4 people in the planet has no break from climate change-driven heat. Global exposure peak on August 13 this year, which was 4.1 billion people. So it's almost half of people living on this planet is actually having unusual temperature. Another one is that the average person on the planet experienced 17 extra days of the risky heat because of the climate change. So every one of us, we actually can feel that. We feel that the temperature is changing, the environment is affecting us. So over 2 billion people, 25% of global population is experiencing 30 or more days of risky heats. And 72 countries, which is home to 2.3 billion people, is experiencing their hottest June to August period since 1970. And 180 cities in Northern Hemisphere had at least one dangerous extreme heat waves. And we have heard a lot of news about the fires and a lot of things. So the climate change is happening. Yeah.
And if you want to find that, it's in a Climate Central report, and it's called People Exposed to Climate Change, June to August 2024. So those numbers come from that. So it's just a very small window of the year. But I did see recently, Farshid, that the global temperatures have gone down. So there's a chance we won't be as hot as 2023, a chance. But it's gone down by 0.01 degrees.
Yes. And normally these going up and down is happening, but we have to look at the cycle and how fast they are happening. So when, for example, the temperature coming down, we shouldn't say, oh, everything is getting better, but we have to see how fast. Normally it takes years to go up and coming down. Now it's basically happening every year or every other year. So that's the issue.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're going to dig into some bigger news, and obviously the big breaking story that happened this week was in Lebanon, when the pages and walkie-talkies exploded, and obviously it was an attack on Hezbollah, the terrorist group, the enemy of Israel. Okay, so I've seen this referred to in a few ways. One is the grim beeper, and the other one is the digital or modern-day Trojan horse. So what do we know so far? Okay, so on Tuesday, within seconds of pager alerts ringing out across Lebanon, it was followed by the sounds of explosions and cries of pain and panic in streets, shops, and homes. I've read stories of children driving along with their dad, and out the window they see somebody's hand shoot off, right? So it's pretty grim. The footage is quite challenging to watch. If you're too sensitive, I recommend don't watch it. The explosions were powered by just a few ounces of an explosive compound concealed within the devices. Following the first attack, at least 12 are dead and 2,700 were wounded. The following day, and I watched one of these on a funeral procession, 20 more people were killed and hundreds were wounded when walkie-talkies started exploding. 4 of the dead were children. One was a story of a 9-year-old girl just came home from school. The pager buzzed. She picked it up to take it to her dad, and she died. Israel has neither confirmed or denied any role in the explosions, but 12 current and former defense and intelligence officials say the Israelis were behind it, describing the operation as complex and long in the making. The Hezbollah chief, did you watch his news conference last night? Did anyone watch it?
No, didn't get it.
He said multiple red lines have been crossed. His name, Nasrallah, has been pushing for years for Hezbollah to invest in pages, which for all their limited capabilities could receive data without giving away a user's location or other compounding information. So this was basically after a lot of senior figures in Hezbollah were being assassinated, which they basically tied to mobile phones. So knowing this, so it's alleged Israel put into motion a plan to establish a shell company that would pose as an international pager producer. So we've heard about BAC Consulting in Hungary, and it was under contract to produce the devices on behalf of Taiwanese company Gold Apollo. They've had a busy PR week. And the reality, based on the experts, is that it was an Israeli front. And there's apparently at least 2 other shell companies that were created to mask the real identities of the people behind it, which is, of course, Mossad, or the Israeli intelligence officers. The pages began shipping to Lebanon in the summer of 2022 in small numbers, but production quickly ramped up after Mr. Nasrallah denounced cell phones. For the Lebanese, now that they now live in a world in which the most common form of communication could be transformed into an instrument of death. And I just want to, before I ask your opinions, I just want to sort of put 4 points across. The first is the commentary that I'm seeing from intelligence officials, not necessarily in the media, but commentary on social media. And the Israelis are being admired for this. It's a stroke of genius. There's high praise. The fact that it wasn't uncovered before this day happened. So there's a lot of praise for the genius behind it. The second thing is the sort of injuries that we're starting to hear about. And there's a really good interview with the doctor on the BBC that talks about it, where people have lost both of their eyes, had half their face blown off. They've lost hands, fingers, a lot of amputations. And, of course, where you put pages, whether it's in your pocket or on your belt, testicles, just big holes in the side of people's bodies. So very, very gruesome, which mean, these people will never be able to fully function in normal life. But also could be, it's obvious that they're part of Hezbollah, so they could be up for an assassination attempts down the track. The third, the real concern for me, is the possibility that this is now, we've got the Middle East, it's gone too far now. Netanyahu has gone too far, and the escalation is just going to ripple out and affect the entire region, which of course goes on to point number 4. It doesn't just stay in that region, it's going to impact the entire world. And just from the simple point of view of, when you travel, will your phone be checked for explosive devices, all the way through to anything can be weaponized anywhere, and is anyone really safe? So I think we're all still trying to process this, but I think this is a very, very bad turn of events, especially where we are as a world and what we actually are facing from a climate perspective. This just feels like very much heading in the wrong direction. What are your thoughts?
Well, I actually looked at this this whole operation as being quite targeted, as in, like, in terms of what it was trying to achieve, and who it was going to impact and how it was done. Uh, because of the way and again, this is assuming that the rest of that story is true, that it's all set up through the shell companies in response to the demand specifically created by the enemy in this particular case, right? Because in terms of who would want to get pagers nowadays, it's not going to be something where people want leading edge technology for communication, what have you. It is for that purpose, untraceable communications, and the orders are being processed through these organizations as well. So in that sense, I think of it as really targeted. It's of course gruesome, and that's I mean, it's something that I think hard to avoid in terms of war. If this is war, if this is something that you are, if for instance, I mean, like, if you're able to do something like this, if I was selling guns, for instance, and there was some way that I could have guns not work in the hands of the enemy, or worse, or better yet, in terms of an instrument of war, damage the enemy in some way when it's trying to hurt me, I would think of that as a strategically very clever and valid plan of attack. So what's troubling about this is that it's kind of latently there, as in, like, it would have been there, and if not activated, would have still been there. That sort of feeling is it's a bit unsettling. But again, I don't know. I mean, in terms of a legitimate weapon, there's always a terrible side of me, which is looking at this from a Wile E. Coyote kind of a perspective. And it's these were acquired for the purposes of communications to harm Israel. I mean, that's kind of what makes that happen in the first place. And when it's at the extremes that it is right now, where it is about striking against Israel, and where the stakes are as high as they are, it actually is kind of it's not as, to me, it feels like it's not as bad as taking out an entire camp where there 700 other people who are not involved in it. So in that sense, it's one of those things. It's again, all the choices that I've heard made, that they're all difficult, impossible choices. But if I were to take the step back and go, like, just purely as cold as I can be about making strategic choices, I do think of this from a philosopher's perspective. It is actually, you are more likely to hurt someone or kill someone that has bad intentions for you in that sense. Yeah, so it's that kind of a thing. I mean, do I think of it as clever, and in terms of strategy and all that, it is brilliant. Is it something that I feel is in the gray areas? Absolutely, it's somewhere that lives there as well. So yeah, but that's where it lives for me anyway.
Yeah. Bashir, do you want to comment on this story?
No, I think from my perspective, I always don't like any war, any kind of the
Yeah.
harming to the different human being. So that's doesn't matter from which side. We are human. We are living here together. So we shouldn't harm each other. We should live all together in peace in this planet.
Yeah. I mean, all I saw was thousands of new recruits for Hezbollah, because everyone in Lebanon's going to have a constant daily reminder from the people who are going to be walking amongst them without limbs and eyes that what has been done to the country. So to me, when are we going to learn? When are we going to grow up? When are we going to stop? But I absolutely see what you're saying, Joe. But on the other side, it's the wrong direction for the world right now. And if we don't wake up pretty quick, we're going to be in all sorts. Well, we're already in all sorts of trouble.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's not easy to think of something as a positive in the light of everything that it looks like. But again, I want to just point out that in terms of the if you like, how it flows to the people who in the end have those pages, it's not like they went into the Apple store and put them into Apple phones for everyone. It was into this particular supplier that, it was supplying in the way it was supplying as well. It was supposed to be, it wasn't meant for, it was meant for subterfuge, right? I mean, that's the whole thing that is the background of it. So it's not as much of a blanket thing as yes, you're gonna have the stories of the pager goes off in the home and a kid picks up the pager to pass it to dad, and that's the kind of thing that happens along the way. But it's not like they went into Pages R Us to get a pager and then just happened to get this. These pages were acquired at scale for a purpose, such as to wage war. I don't have as much of a disdain for it, because they're not exactly they're not exactly they're not the pages that we had in the 80s when everyone just had pages. These were pages that were gotten from a supplier that was, it was doing all the stuff to make it available to people who basically were trying to be on the down low and to run subterfuge, and it was to evade. So I do feel a bit differently, I think, and again, because it's the format of a pager. I think some of the feelings that we carry with it is because it was an ordinary thing for us when back about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, having a pager is what everyone would have kind of had. It's not the kind of thing you that everyone nowadays just has. It's the kind of thing you have now if you don't want to be tracked. So it's certainly devious, but it is not as unfair a tactic as it may feel. But I think sometimes it's because of the context that it's a device that is now a different device today than it was for us when we were growing up.
Yeah, and like you said, a lot of people's lives were saved because of the direct attack. So we've got Keith joining us from Seattle. Hello, Keith. All right, Joe. Let's talk about Russian interference.
Oh, man. So, for those of you who've had any doubts at all, and, until you see the evidence, you go like, yeah, it's hard to say that it's for real. But guess what? Looks like Russia does interfere with the elections after all. And actually, it's not just Russia, of course, to be fair. We can get to the Iranians another time. But there's been a set of leaked documents that basically reveals Russia's involvement in the European elections, various European elections, and how they've done it as well. And guess what? They're very organized. When I was going through the report by vsquare.org, I was just taken by how professional it was as a service. So, you hear about things nowadays as software as a service, marketing as a service. Disinformation as a service is basically what's available now. And the way it's laid out in terms of what they can do and what's deliverable, it is almost exactly what a PR firm would basically put to you as a proposal for work done. Except that for a PR firm, what they do is they try to get those articles out there. They try to get those things into the mainstream media. What the troll factories are doing, or this particular troll factory and this documents from this particular troll factory is doing, is creating a number of pieces of misinformation, disinformation, intentionally in the form of memes, cartoons. It's all very, very systematically laid out. And then, of course, engaging is well the next level. So, like a brand that wants to get its soft fluffy shoes in front of the audience, they have to get hold of the right influencers, right? So what they've done instead is look for what we've known as the useful idiots, right? People who have an influence on that particular audience you want to reach, who don't really completely realize that they're being manipulated, but are manipulatable. And if you put the right kind of memes in front of those people, they get carried on, they get reposted, and then there's a whole machine after that which works on commenting, right? So you have the first wave, which is the meme spreading, and then the commenting, and the commenting is always it has a slant, and it's insidious, because as you hear about what the brief is for the comments, they kind of make sense, as in the commentators they don't sound like they don't sound like they're coming off the deep end. It doesn't sound fascist. It's all that kind of stuff, but it's playing on those feelings, and actually sort of justifying some of those more extreme views. So have they influenced the elections? I mean, they've certainly put out a lot of stuff, a lot of propaganda. It's gone out there, the word's out. Have they influenced it? I think they have. I think what they've done is, they've what's the word for it? Not galvanized, but they've made people who sort of cared a little bit about something, really care about something, and therefore it changed the way people turned out to vote, I think.
Yeah, they've tapped into fear and created so much anger. Bashir, he mentioned Iranians, and obviously the Iranians and the Chinese are involved in this as well. You got any thoughts?
No, basically, because I normally don't follow so much of these political things, so I'm more happy with the climate side of it. So
yeah. Okay, I just thought when he mentioned the Iranians, I thought you might want to punch him in the face or something. But so there's a story that broke this week or last week about a young lady in a wheelchair. Apparently, when she was younger, she hit her with a car and left her a cripple. And that was a Russian propaganda. A Microsoft report released this week or last week sort of talked about it. And it's just a case of we all have to be so much smarter and really go wide. And if it doesn't feel right, look into it, dig into it. Where's the source? Where's it coming from? What's the platform? Does it even exist? Does it look right? But the other side of things is the comments, which I thought was really good. So sitting in the climate space for a long time, you get abuse left, right, and center. And I just ignore it. I literally couldn't care less about these people because, one, I don't know who they are. I don't know if they're a bot or a troll. But I literally do not care because it's what they're saying is just such nonsense that it's not even worth engaging with. But it's also, it doesn't have any emotional impact on me because I have no idea who they are, where they come from, what they think, what they believe, where they even came up with their knowledge. I'd much, if Rashid dropped on a comment and said something different, I would listen to him because I know he's paying attention, right? So that's what I'm interested in. So for everyone out there who's sort of stepping away because of the trolls, don't, because it's just noise, it's just nonsense. The only people you should care about is the people you know or you know of. So people who have formed opinions and have spent the time. I think that's really important. Just quickly moving on before we hand over to Fashid for his first one. So this was going to be for Tim. So we've talked about AI and its impact on the climate before, but there's a website called Blood in the Machine, which I only just came across for the first time. And it's an article that discusses a very grim subject. And it's basically how the tech giants, once heralded as champions of clean energy and low carbon solutions, are helping to automate and exacerbate the climate crisis. And for someone like me who's been in the tech industry all my life and have admired it, I'm still quite stunned that the industry that actually might push us over the line is the technology industry. So there's three ways that AI companies are exacerbating the climate crisis. So the first is they're selling tools to help AI companies, to help oil companies develop AI tools that can accelerate fossil fuel extraction. The second is they're running data centers that require 10 times the amount of electricity as you'd need for a typical way of searching, like on Google. And the third is they're giving fossil fuel companies a reason or an excuse to build more power plants. And this is happening. So it finishes with, the stakes couldn't be much higher. After all, catastrophic climate change is on our doorstep. As long as the AI bubble continues to inflate, it seems it risks further revitalizing the fossil fuels industry right along with it. It's darkly ironic that AI is being pitched as essential to the future when it is breathing life into some of the most pollutive technologies of our past. People always tell me they're AI shortcuts, and then they say, what do you use AI for? And I'm like, I don't really use AI, and I know that I'm risking being left behind. But I suppose when I do the transcripts for these, that's probably AI technology. The reason I don't use it is because I understand how energy intensive it is. And if I was going to use it, I would only use it if it was something really, really important that mattered. But I think consumer AI use is something, I think we need to be putting AI use on the back burner where it's not essential, and only use it where it is essential. And that's saving the biggest crises of our time. That's where I think we need to go. I'm not anti-AI, but I am anti what's happening with it from a energy perspective. And, Ireland a couple of weeks ago said no to a Google data center because it wouldn't be able to guarantee the electricity supply and the water supply in the local community. I thought that was really good to see. But, in countries, in regions like Africa and Asia where corruption is rife and people are just going to take the money, they're building data centers in places that are in drought. The local people don't have access to water, So, yeah, I think we need to have a very sensible discussion about this, and we're not. If someone asks AI how to build the power plants it needs, indeed. Yeah, I got it. Don't worry. All right, Fashid.
Yes. So let's go to now we talk about the data center and also the climate change and also about the relation between those. So let's talk about another material, which is everybody talk about, and that's plastic. But before I mention about the news, let me clarify that plastic by itself is not a bad material. It's actually a good material. It's a good engineering material that we have developed. But the way we are using it is not correct. So plastic is basically very strong material. It can last for ages, but we are using it for single-use item, which is for a couple of second use. And that's not correct. But plastic is good material. So by saying that, there is an article that mentioned that they have done the study. They have mentioned that we actually every year put 57 million tons of the plastic in outdoors. So they haven't studied, they just eliminated those plastics that go to the landfill, the plastic that go to the waste to energy, the plastic that's recycled, they eliminated those. These plastic is actually left outside in the environment. And this is to understand the scale of it. So basically with this amount of the plastic, you can fill New York City Central Park with the plastic with the height of the Imperial State Building. So it's a huge amount of the plastic which just left alone outside. So and they mentioned that out of this plastic, 2/3 of it is come from the south hemisphere. But why? It doesn't mean that they are actually using more plastic, because they have less technology to basically recycle them. They don't have waste to energy so much. They don't have the ability, for example, good waste management. So that's why it's left outside. So don't think that basically those countries, which is majority of them, is not well-developed countries that are using more plastic, but they are actually don't manage it properly. So, and then this study go further and mention that these plastics, because it's left outside, so degrade over the time and creating a lot of microplastic, plastic particles, nanoplastics. And these plastics is actually carrying away by the airflow, carrying away by the waters and everything, and go everywhere on the planet. So if it is basically in some countries, there are more waste plastics, but the effect will be everywhere globally. So everybody in each country, they are actually affecting that, because it is in the environment, it is in the food, it is even in some places, for example, in the middle of the desert, which is for the hundreds of the kilometers, there is no living human there. They found these microplastics. Or for example, in Everest or in the poles, they found it. So these studies actually mention about the issue of these microplastics, and also mention that why these countries are actually having so much of the plastic left alone in there. And also mentioning that the United Nations basically predicting that the amount of the plastic not only going down, but also increasing over the year because of these kind of the more usage, more population, and not proper management of the waste.
Yeah. So I always get concerned or chuckle, one or the other, when I see officials in the plastic industry praised the study, because that's, to me, it's a bit of a sign, right? So one of the things that they didn't focus on, I've talked about it in the show before. So in 2025, the EU will ban all exports of plastic, so the colonial waste industry. And I spent 7 years living in Thailand, and every day I faced the plastics dirge that was coming from the ocean, especially in the off season. And Europe at the moment is sending more plastic waste to the countries that are still accepting it. So China stopped a number of years ago, but there's many other places that are. And of course, it's so corrupt, even countries that say they're not accepting it are accepting it. So, I think the point that you made, this is about the amount of waste that gets released. It's not the amount of waste that's managed, right? So, there's no infrastructure in the global south where the waste is being imported to deal with the waste. So it's ending up in the environment, which, like you say, impacts all of us. So it was kind of it's an interesting report, but until we tackle the problem and help the countries that have got the majority of the waste to deal with that waste, we're never going to do it. And there's no sign at all. Like, I know in Singapore, they've got the most fantastic incinerators probably in the world dealing with the waste here, but it doesn't matter if all of your neighbors are releasing waste into the environment, which is going to end up in the ocean, which is going to end up in your beaches, right? So it's a bit of a, and in November we've got the Global Plastics Treaty happening in Korea. Are you involved in that, Farshid?
No, not this year.
No, but it sounds like no one's got any hope that this is going to be resolved as an issue. So it's just going to keep getting worse, and it's already horrific.
Yeah, I think it's getting worse, but I think we have to look at it for solving it from different angle. One, from the consumer angle. So if when we want to buy something, we put a smart choice. We don't buy, for example, single-use coffee cups, or we take your coffee or something, or any other aspect. So we do that. But at the same time, from the big industries, from government, they need to put those innovation in the place. There is already there is a technology that can solve this, but it needs a huge support from the different angles, from big industries, from government, from the other people as well. So I think I have hope, and I know this will be changed, but maybe it need a little bit of more push. It need a little bit more years. That the people realize this is a huge concern, and then they will start to change that.
Yeah. A really simple thing is put water in cans. You can recycle every can, right? So IKEA is doing it. You can buy water in their shops in cans. One of my friends in Phuket has got a social, what's it called? A social enterprise where she's selling water in cans and raising money for charities. You go to Bangkok at the end of a business day, there's like a 2-3 story high net full of plastic water bottles. So you need to, one, stop putting water in plastic bottles because it means you're ingesting the plastic anyway. But two, clean the water so people can drink from the taps again. That's another big thing that needs to be addressed. But the idea that the consumers will make the decision to stop. You walk around Asia, people have got a cup with a plastic lid and a plastic straw inside a single plastic bag to carry the cup. So they're not making the choice and they're not seeing the problem. And I really struggle with that. I'm really struggling with that. Like I've taken photos of somebody sat down to have lunch and walked away, and on the table are like 10 pieces of plastic from one person's lunch. In Thailand, I think the average person uses 8 plastic bags a day. Singapore is the largest single-use plastic user in the world. Australia's second, by the way. So you start looking. So we've just got to take these things off the table, because for whatever reason, even though the people that are overwhelmed with the waste can't see what their behavior is contributing to it, and the choices aren't there to be sustainable, or the choices are too expensive. And I always say sustainability is a poverty issue. If you can buy a bottle of Coke or 6 cans of Coke, if the cans of Coke are twice the price of the bottle of Coke, you're going to buy the bottle of Coke, right? That's, yeah. So we're just not even touching the surface, which frustrates me.
Well, I mean, part of the thing is, it's not just about those choices. I mean, it's not just about what is good for the environment. It's also about what is really convenient and what really kind of works, right? So the problem with plastic is that it's so good at what it does, right? That really is the problem. As in, like, it is very good at all those things that we talked about, those single use ideas or whatever it is. I mean, that is the what we call it, the material that does that the best, right? If you want to use single use wood or whatever else that you might look at, for instance, if you're trying to come up with the cheap solution that allows you to do all those kind of things, it's very hard to come up with a better solution than plastic. And this is from an industry perspective and also from a consumer perspective, right? And that really is the challenge. I think way back in the day there was this thing about looking at fair trade and fair labor practices as well, right? And I think the phrase that went around was, I'd really love to support all this, but those shoes are so cute. It's about the consumer in the end, not just recognizing that there's a problem, but also at the same time there is a utility, or there's something, this thing that is detestable or is expensive or should be more expensive, isn't expensive, it's convenient, and therefore at this particular point in time is the best solution I have.
Yeah, I mean the marketing industry behind this is fairly phenomenal, but don't forget that the plastic is made from the part of the oil which is already extracted. So it's the sort of the bottom of the barrel sort of stuff that gets turned into the plastic waste. So it's using a commodity that's already being pulled out of the ground, and the fossil fuel industry like using it. And obviously we don't have the waste from the fossil fuels, but you look at the original reason for creating plastic, and then how quickly that grew to astronomical proportions, and it's still growing and it's not slowing down. And the only China's doing a massive investment in using bamboo, turning some of the single-use stuff that we use, which I think will be phenomenal. If the Chinese are behind it, it's gonna sort of get out there into the world in a bigger way. But yeah, we're still tinkering around the edges. All right, Donald Trump.
Well, yeah, it's been a big news week, as you said earlier today, and there's been another assassination attempt on Donald Trump. And the thing is, some of you may not have actually heard about that second assassination attempt, because I remember when it came on the news for me, it sort of came on and then disappeared very quickly as well. It was someone tried to do something and then it kind of disappeared as well. And there's a lot of questions about whether or not, first of all, that there is actually a campaign to try to get news stories like this off, or is it also a case that these things kind of don't amaze us and don't get us anymore? So like when you talk about if it bleeds, it leads, right? I mean, an assassination attempt now on Donald Trump. Okay, so my thing about this, first of all, if you want some details about it, it was out on the golf course. Somebody was lying in wait with a AK-40. I think it was an AK-47 or AR-15. Sorry, AR-15 with a scope, with body armor and stuff like that. But they were lying in wait for Donald Trump. And then one of the Secret Service agents that was in charge of going one hole ahead to do a scope kind of saw the barrel peeking out of the bushes and opened fire. And that individual made a getaway, actually got away, but was apprehended later as well. And we found out since a lot of details about the person. But those may be not as important right now as the fact that it's not in the news anymore. It just happened early this week, and you probably haven't heard much about it.
Yeah.
So is there a kind of conspiracy to not cover stuff like this? And then you had even Elon Musk getting in on this as well with a tweet that was controversial, as in like why isn't anyone trying to assassinate Biden or Kamala, right? And that was taken down in the end, and he described it as a joke. But the, well, I kind of know how Elon Musk's brain works, and I can kind of see how that was. It would have seemed funny to him, but it's the kind of thing you don't put out. I mean, it's just not the thing to put out really at a particular time. But it's and so this is where I kind of have to add my take on the whole thing, and I think what happened was Donald Trump may have ruined assassination attempts for everyone in the way he approached the first time it happened to him, as in like there was an opportunity, and at that particular time when the assassination attempt happened, it was basically the election was sewn up, right? I mean, the idea was that he was going to win. It was for him to lose at that point. And I think what he did was he went on to lose by doing what he did, right? As in, like, you had a close call, you had the ability to call for unity. You didn't do that. You went on a rambling speech instead for 90 minutes about everything and everything that really wasn't about unity, and so people kind of it became this thing where people they got desensitized to it, and it wasn't by anybody else desensitizing them except Donald Trump himself. So it became this thing to ignore. So unfortunately, that primed everyone. So that now when this attempt happened, I remember my first reaction to hearing that there was another assassination attempt. And I, again, not proud of the fact that I felt that way, but I really felt neutral about it. Because it really didn't have any of the shock and awe that I think assassination attempts maybe should have, and also partly because of the context of it, right? I mean, you're someone who's supposed to be in this kind of situation. You are a public figure, and whatever it is, and you're out there doing things that, and there's some reports about how difficult it is to try to give protection or security to Trump, because he chooses not to live safely. He chooses not to do things safely, and there's a reason why you don't have as many attempts on other famous celebrities and and world leaders. It's because they put a little bit of effort into not getting hurt, right? So it's a complex thing. People again, I don't think people look at the whole picture, and like the whole idea is like if people in glass houses, first of all, shouldn't throw stones, and secondly, if you're someone really famous, don't live in a glass house. I mean that's the kind of thing that I think Donald Trump doesn't want to do, right? He wants to be that person. He wants to make all that noise. He wants to be inciting and what have you, and then he wants to basically say to Secret Service, "No, I want to do it this way instead of the way you guys do it." Right?
Yeah,
things are going to happen.
So as Keith says, the assassination attempt was just another day in America, and they just got back to people eating cats and dogs, which we saw. And it's like there's this brain disassociation going on, like the politicization of it. Both of the assassins were former Republicans or are Republicans, just not on Donald Trump's side, right? Well, the first one, they actually still don't know what that one was all about. So, so it's and the politicization of it, and toning down the rhetoric, those sort of comments. And it's like, really? So, but let's move on to the final one that Fashid wants to talk about, which is how plastics are impacting us. And interestingly, this is an area that we know so little about, but there seems to be some furious research happening in the last couple of years where they're actually starting to really understand the impact, not just on human bodies, but on all living beings on the planet. So what's your second piece?
Yes, so we at the first piece we talk about the plastic living out there, creating the microplastic, nanoplastic. So basically these plastics are very tiny pieces of the plastics that you can see by eye. So these are below 1 micrometer size, and because of that size, it can actually go into the food. Or all the animals, everything, they can eat it. They can keep it in the body. So we have found before also there was a study that we human beings, we are eating plastic. So there was a very shocking study that has happened, and mentioned that each of us per week eat equivalent to 1 credit card of the plastics. So that's amount of plastic because of the food, because of the airflow, because of everything is coming to our body. This particular study, they are actually looking at the people with the heart disease. So they sampled around 257 patients that already had the heart disease, and they measured the amount of the plastics in their body, in their tissue, so the microplastics. And then they follow them, and they saw after, for example, after those surgery or after the heart disease that has been solved, then they see that those people that they have plastic in their tissue or in their body, 20% of them, they have again the heart issue compared to those which don't have, which was around 7.5%. So it shows that they see the link between having the plastic in the body, having this microplastic in the body, and heart disease. And they see that this is the affecting of that. So because they study people with already have the heart disease, so we can't directly say, okay, everybody with the microplastic in the body, they will have the heart issue. But shows the effect of that. So it shows that it's affecting us, depend on for example, the precondition we have, or depend on the people to people we face off in different way. But we are eating plastic, we are basically breathing in plastic going to our tissues, and it creating issue for us in different ways. And that was a very interesting study that shows this.
Yeah, it sure is. There was another report this week that we're breathing it in through our nose and it's going directly to our brain. So basically, when you walk into a room, all those plastic clothes that everybody's wearing are shedding tiny little bit of plastics, and we're sucking it up into our brains, right? That was the image that immediately came to my mind. I mean, we're in this is part of the novel entities of the 9 planetary boundaries. So it's microplastics, chemicals. So there was another report, chemical toxins from food processing migrate into our bodies. So we're really doing a number on ourselves. And one of the big issues that I see is the endocrine disruption, which is impacting sterility in males, fertility in females, not just humans, all of them. It's also like, so, in fish, they're turning from females to males, and all sorts of things are going on there. And I was reading there's more conversation around population as an issue. On one side, you've got the Musks of the world saying we need more people. On the other side, we need less people. So that's a big part of the conversation. But it seems with all the chemicals and microplastics we're putting in our bodies, we're probably sorting that out. So they expect male sterility to be in place by 2045, and that's not that far away, right? But yeah, we're certainly doing a number. So we've got a few more minutes, so I want to get into the theme before you go. I just want to say, if you want to get in touch with Farshid, he's on LinkedIn, and he's Dr. Farshid is your handle. So adaptation and regeneration required. So we're seeing the massive floods across Africa, Asia, Europe. Obviously, the Europe and North American floods are getting bigger media attention. But so far, 1,500 lives, $15 billion worth of damage, and that's just going to keep going up. Like in Europe, they're hitting Italy at the moment. I saw a meme this week. It said, we're not experiencing the flood of the century. We're experiencing a century of flood. So for every 1 degree of warming, got 7% more moisture in the air. So we're going to have more floods. It's not just floods. We've had mega fires. So Portugal, I think they've got 100 fires going at the moment with 200,000 homes at risk of burning. But going back to the floods, dams are collapsing, dam walls are collapsing, homes, farms and businesses are being destroyed, crops are being lost, which of course are going to continue to exacerbate famine across the world, especially in Africa. Millions are being displaced, again in Africa, but we're seeing that obviously in Thailand, in Myanmar when they got hit by floods. But in Nigeria, it knocked down the walls of some zoos where 80% of the animals died, but 20% got out, and it was lions and ostriches roaming the streets. But also a jail. About 300 inmates were able to escape from a jail. But I'm looking at it all, right? It's just it's so crazy where we are, right? So the scientists have told governments what's happening and what to expect. So there's an adaptation required. Is your country, so Australia's about to get La Nina again, and everyone in Australia knows that means massive floods, right? So, but the floods are going to be bigger. So what are they doing to all those people who've built and bought houses in the floodplains? But it's not just the floodplains. As the floods get worse, the people just outside the floodplains could be at risk. Are the dams ready for 7% more moisture? When you look at sea level rise, are the water sources protected, or are they going to be inundated with seawater? Is the sewerage protected? So it's like everywhere you look, we're not even doing the basics. And then on the regeneration side, you've seen it in the UK. I saw it in Phuket. A big landslide a few weeks ago, 13 people died. The landslide began at the bottom of a luxury villa that was built high up in the mountain. Another landslide landed just behind a row of houses. They deforested the mountain probably to build another resort or more luxury villas, right? So we've got to address nature. We've got to use nature as an ally to manage the water. And obviously, just what's going on in Brazil at the moment, with the deforestation and the worst drought, and the temperatures are in the 40s. It's nowhere near summertime yet. So I know, what's it going to take? What are our politicians thinking? Rashid, you need to go. So give me a couple of thoughts.
Yeah, so basically, I think we haven't realized that our existence depend on this planet. So we haven't realized that we are part of this planet. So by changing the planet, we are actually affecting our survival. So I think if we realize that, then we will change the behavior. And unfortunately, we haven't realized that yet. So that's the issue.
Yeah. Do you think we've got time?
I think if we start now, we can turn it quickly. But if we wait for another 10 years, then we need 200 years of effort to turn it back. So that's we are at a very critical point, and we have to start now to make sure that, for example, in next 50 years, we can turn it back.
Yeah. I don't think we can do it quickly. I think it's going to, because there's so much baked in, right? It's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse. And if we clean it up, if we clean up our atmosphere, it's going to get hotter. So it's going to get worse. So whatever we do, because we left it so late, the idea that we can turn it around and have what we've got. So I'll just give you an example. I was at an event the other day, and it was talking about investment in consumer industries to make them more sustainable. And I was like, I didn't have a chance to ask the question, but to me, it's not about if every consumer industry on the planet did what it's currently doing, but did it sustainably, but still created the same scale of product, then we're not solving the problem, because no matter how sustainable it is, it still requires energy to produce it. So we're still using more energy. And if they're still growing, and if there's still publicly listed companies that need to have growth, then we're not going to solve the problem. And it's like, when are we going to start having the real conversations, about what we really need to do, what industries need to go,
Yes. And exactly, and that's what we are missing. For example, I just very quickly mentioned a few sentences about these. So basically, if we know, for example, where we need to target our effort, then we can have more impact. Soil is one of the biggest reservoir of the carbon dioxide on the planet. So we can absorb carbon dioxide in the soil. So how we can do it? By increasing the organic matter in the soil. So if we increase the organic matter in the soil, is actually we are storing the carbon in there. Soil will become more fertile. We can produce more food. It at the same time can hold more water in the soil, so less flooding. So you can see if only one aspect. If we look at the soil and increase the organic matter in the soil, we can affect a lot of other things. But unfortunately, we are missing this key area that we need to focus on, which can help us a lot. And we are focusing on other aspect, for example, on the other things which creating the solution for us, but at the same time is not in the larger scale that can solve our issue.
Yeah. So that's another area of passion for you, soil health, right? And
Yes.
it's a fascinating topic in its own right, but it's another area where soil health is degrading on a massive scale. And Keith's saying there will be no systemic change in time. Troubles rapidly accelerate after 2030. I'm actually seeing some scientists saying that the acceleration's already begun, and actually it's going to be in the next couple of years that we're really going to start. So I even think after 2030 is ambitious these days. I think it's going to be much sooner. Well, we're already seeing it, right?
Yes,
I'm sure
exactly.
the Italians are feeling the heat today, and the Portuguese, right? So yeah, but I know you need to go.
Yes.
If you can stay if you want, but it's just really great to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. And just for the last word for your audience, please be kind to our planet. Thank you very much, everyone.
Nice. I like it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
See you, Farshid.
See you.
All right, Joe, you, adaptation and regeneration. What do you think? And I know these aren't your areas.
Oh, well, okay, so big challenges, right? There's so what I try to do is go far and wide in terms of the various sources of information as well about this, and I think I've shared this with you as well, that there is more at play than just what man is doing, and that is all something that really needs to be factored in as well, right? But it shouldn't become the excuse for us not to do anything. Right?
Explain what you mean by that. Explain what you mean by that.
Okay, so the way the Earth kind of has been doing its thing, regardless of us, over history, is that it has been going through warming cycles and cooling cycles, and it's been colder, it's been hotter, right? That's kind of where it has been before man, before industrialization, and for various reasons, right? And that is something that does happen. A planetary system is going to go through cycles like that. And some of those things are not going to be just because we were here. I'm not going to try and defend man in terms of the activities it's done and whether it's been good for the environment. But at the same time, some of these things are just like they're just cyclical, as in like it like the so the what I'm drawing on right now is some of the work in terms of historical work in terms of where uh, temperatures that the planet has experienced before, where it's been before, what the highest temperatures were, lowest temperatures. We look at things like recorded, the highest recorded temperatures, and sometimes we look at that and go like, oh, that therefore is the limit of history. And then there's what you find out by looking back at the data that the planet gives you in terms of the layers in the soil, and you go like, some of these things happen and only would happen with much more extreme temperatures, right? So it and when those things happen, it wasn't because we were burning fuel, it wasn't because we were doing all the different things as well. So that's one aspect of it. There is a warming and cooling of the planet that's happening, but simultaneously there is this thing that we just because, like, for instance, if you're on a boat that happens to be sinking, and it's sinking, right? You don't make a hole in it and make it worse.
Mm.
Right, so the things you can do to compensate and push against it as well. So I think there's a real issue in terms of trying to be binary about the situation and saying like, oh, it's there are a lot of people who cite what I just told you and said, therefore it's not us, right?
Yeah.
You know, and there's some surprising numbers that got me this past couple of weeks actually. One was like, for instance, we're always looking at the airline industry being responsible for a lot of pollution, and we feel really, I mean, it's easy to point a finger at the airline industry, right? But the airline industry, for all the flights and the millions of people that's moving around the world right now, isn't doing as bad a job in terms of the environment than us just driving around. That number shocked me, and I went like, wow. Because
Yeah,
if you think about that, you imagine that it's going to be much worse, probably for the airline industry as a whole. But no, just you going to the shops, uh, and multiplying that over and over and over again, that's basically worse than that industry. So
but it's a growth issue, Joe, right? So you're talking about, so the airline industry is about 4% of emissions worldwide, but it's not just emissions from the flying, it's all the other things that come with flying. The impact on tourism. We're seeing protests across Europe. There's too many tourists, there's too many people flying, and it's a growth issue, right? The data center AI explosion, it's now at 1%, but it's expected to get to 9%. It keeps saying things have never happened this fast, and a cyclical history does not explain the physics of today. So I've heard what you said, and I've heard many people say it, and I've listened to all of the different points of view. So when you look at what's going on in our environment, so in the last 200 years, we have released so much CO2 into the atmosphere that we are now living in a world which physics dictate means that we will get between 5 and 10 degrees of global warming. Not 2 degrees, not 3 degrees, 5 to 10 degrees. So that's humanity over, right? And it's the speed of the growth, right? So if you go back to the paleontological record millions of years ago, it took thousands of years for the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere to get where it is today. We've done it in 200 years. So that's the thing I'm sort of trying to understand is there's actually no evidence in our past of what we've done to ourselves today. It's never happened before. We had single cell amoebas basically the last time it was this high, right? So what does that mean? From a physics perspective, and it's one of the reasons I love working with David Coe. He's a physicist. What does it mean? What are we looking at? How quickly is it going to happen? How explosive is it going to be? Can we turn it around? Can we suck all this CO2 back in? We haven't even started trying, and all we're doing is using more energy. So we haven't even started trying, and everything just keeps growing. And I think that's the annual CO2 change 0.79 just last month, right? So apparently we're at 1.61 warming right now. But what does it mean? And there was a report just a few weeks ago. There is very, very little research being done to understand the implications of what these higher temperatures mean. And I honestly think nobody was sitting there going, well, we're not going to do that, or it's going to be 2100 or 2200. You know, people were thinking that, and I don't think it's malicious. I think it's stupid, but I don't think anyone's really sat. So, like the cyclical argument, yeah, it warms up, it changes, it gets cooler, it's all that sort of stuff. But for 200 years, there's this spike, and it goes straight up, and that's us. It's all us, and we're not turning it around. We're not stopping what's causing the problem, and we're not trying to address the problem, and we're not facing the problem. And you look at the US election, you look at all the elections, we're not facing the problem. And until we all come together and say, okay, we've got a problem, this is what it is, this is what it's going to take. Are you all on board, or are the majority on board? Let's go. Let's give it a go. Or we don't, and we wait for it to all break.
Well, what I think is happening now, which is, I mean, of course, you could look at it and go like, well, it should have happened a long time ago, but it's getting to be in fashion now, right? So it is like everything, you know, in the world, because of the way because of the way time works, right? Like you just described this restaurant right now as in like the spike. I mean, you talk about the spike. How long it take for the spike to happen? You say 200 years. That's while it is fast, it's relative, and I completely agree with it. It's just like if someone says to you, and it's arguably true as well. I can say like, you know, come and watch the grass grow, and you're like, no, I'm not going to watch the grass grow. No, but this is bamboo. It's the fastest growing grass in the world. You can watch it grow.
You can literally watch it grow.
Yeah, but but you go like, I don't really see much. I mean, depending on how your time frame, again, you're gonna look at this and go like, I don't see it, right? So that is the real challenge that we have right now, as in like it is one of those things where it is a generational thing. The changes are generational, and
until they're not.
I agree. It gets to the point where it accelerates and gets out of control. But up to this point, it's been that way. So there is at least now, mainstream politics, if you like, is coming on board what was basically hippie stuff back in the 60s and 70s, right? And again, like you know of this as well, right? The films that warned about global warming, much the way what was that? An Inconvenient Truth was doing. Basically, the first film that's available, and you can catch it on YouTube as well, I think was made in the 50s. So, you know, it's been something that we've been aware of. The scientists have been aware of, and it's again whether or not we said it's worth it. It's what we like to do. It's the same problem that we have with plastic. It's just so convenient. Life is just so good because of the way this is done. Whatever it is, AI so makes work so easy, makes productivity so easy, makes growth so easy. It makes all these things that we like or want or desire, that we go like, you know what? Maybe I'm willing to take a hit of, and you don't feel you're really taking the hit of it, right? So it is if you like the analogy you can look at is, it's essentially like the human race as a whole it's kind of become corrupt, in the sense that it was corruption unintentionally, as in it was an unconscious corruption that said that, you know what, all these things are great, I'm going to do it. What's the price of it? It's okay, no big deal. It isn't something that I can really feel terrible about. And if I were to do like look at even my own lifespan right now and talk about the warming of temperatures and stuff like that, on one hand I can say it is scary that it has warmed as much as it has, but at the same time, when I just say like, you know, back in my day, with the hottest days we had was 34 degrees, and someone says, well, today what is it, 36 or 37, you know, in Singapore, and someone says, well, that doesn't sound like much. It doesn't sound like a really big problem. But because we understand other implications about it, we know that is something to be really, really upset about. The fact that it has gone that much in a lifespan.
In Asia, but the biggest issue is once it gets to 35, rice crops start to fail. So you know, it's like like, no, I get it. You know, and the problem is when you've been looking at this for a really long time, and we're getting to the point where the escalation has begun. So the Earth energy imbalance. So there's a famous story of in World War II, there was this island off Greenland or something where the Americans set up during World War II, and they put some deer on this island. And then the war ended and they left. And then somebody went back and the deer were flourishing. There were thousands of them. And then about another decade, they went back and there was just carcasses everywhere because basically the deers just went into overshoot and they had no ability to control what they consumed, right? So they destroyed themselves. So they got down to eating the roots. But when you wait to the point where you see the consequences of our actions and the fact that the waste in our environment isn't enough for everyone to start acting. And just because like in a place like Singapore, you don't necessarily see the waste.
Yeah.
You go on holidays anywhere in Asia and I mean, anyone who's been to Bali, it's revolting. You know, I remember taking my boys when they were small and they're just digging rubbish out of the sand on the beach. It's like, but it's everywhere now, right? But when it comes to the environment, the weather, the extreme weather, if the fact that we've waited to see it rather than believe the experts saying we don't want to get to that point. And so now that we're at that point, what we have to do is so much more dramatic and potentially impossible to turn around, right?
Well, it's also what the story means to people now, right? I mean, if you think about the like your experience of it, and you look at a beach, and I can recall as a younger person going to a beach that was dirty, that was polluted, right? And my thoughts were not that the world is polluting, and this is pollution from the world that's happening here. My thoughts is well, basically they don't look after this beach. Right.
Yeah.
So because that was the story that I carried with me. I wasn't thinking about it from that particular perspective. And that's really the challenge that I think is there for communicators, right? So I feel like sometimes we are a little bit too we're too passive in terms of trying to get the message out there and getting people's attention. I think we can go too far. As in Allah, disrupting works of art and stuff. And I think that again just takes you into a different space. But we need to be a little bit more well armed, if you like, in terms of how to be able to communicate, how to get the word across, the analogies that we put across, the facts that we arm ourselves with. You know, I think too many people who feel badly about things don't bother to find out exactly why they should feel badly about it. You know, so when you're faced with that kind of thing, you can go like, look, she's in the mood, he's in the mood, whatever it is, right? But if they're able to say, no, listen, look, these are the 4 things here right now which you have to really think about, and this is absolutely true. If this continues, that continues, whatever, we're going to have a problem here. So yes, I am in a bit of mood about that, but here's why. Now you can think about it as well. I think that's what's missing a lot of times. It really is about having opinions and getting into the politics about things, but the fundamental facts, and this is why there's a need for better communication about those facts as well, better analogies, better ways of telling the stories about it, is that they don't come across in a sticky way. You know, like if you talk about stuff like I like the line, like, for instance, this is not the flood of the century of floods, right? That kind of a effort that goes into the thought to try to tell the story. And again, if it's completely true, that's the thing that needs to be there as well. If you can bring it all together and then put a button on it, and then people can really get, yep, okay, I see this. And then what happens is in real life, when they look at stuff, they're gonna hear it and go like, yeah, I get it. You know what? I have to agree with this.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's one of the biggest challenges is it is considered a communication challenge, and scientists are not necessarily the greatest communicators. I watch science communication from light and breezy and bubbly all the way through to doom. And I'm obviously a communicator in the mix. I'm trying to share the story. A lot of people don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. It doesn't matter how well I tell the story, Joe. They don't want to hear it because it's interfering with their life right now. even though what I'm telling them that a much, much bigger interference is on the way. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to know. They do not want to know. A lot of people have said to me, "Oh yeah, but it's not going to happen until 2100," and I'm like, "No, but it's already happening
It's
now.
still going to happen, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. So there's this unwillingness to look this in the eye, and
Yep.
people like me, and there's thousands of people like me around the world, have been trying to gently lead people. Not everyone's been gentle. A lot of people have been bludgeoning people into it, right? But it doesn't matter what way you've gone about it. People don't want to listen to it. And at some point, they're going to have to listen to it. All of those people being flooded, they're listening, right? They're listening. Is that when you start listening? When you've lost your home, when you've lost everything, when you've lost your life, you know?
Well, when you talk about that and you say that they were listening, right? This is the thing that really kind of brought it home for me in terms of like people still don't get it, right? We had a whole series of situations in Singapore where there was lots and lots of rain. We had floods and we call it ponding. There was a whole thing about Singapore, that happened, right?
How long ago was that?
It's some years ago right now already, right? It really is a few years ago. And it was not the way people took it and ran. It was not an issue of the environment. It was not an issue about global warming. It wasn't an issue about all those things. But it became a version of the story that was convenient for the locals to tell themselves as well. And it was about it became a story about government. It became a story about inefficiencies or gaps. It became a government story and maintenance story and infrastructure story, instead of being recognized for what it was, basically a symptom of what was happening globally, right? There was something happening globally. I mean, we talked about things as well, like in terms of the once in 100-year events or 400-year events, right? And it's a concept that most people don't think about, right? And when you told me about it, for instance, and this is you telling me about Steve, who's an engineer who talks about things like that. When engineers build a building, for instance, they say we got to build it so that it can withstand a catastrophe that will, like that there's a once in 100-year flood or whatever it is, and that we're faced with a world right now where, again, the tempo and the pace, as you're saying, is increasing. It's something that I now am aware of, but I can say that a lot of people remain unaware of. Those concerns, they haven't come up and they haven't been looked at that way. There's still people who are looking at things right now where there's a flooding or situation, like in Singapore, for instance, right? The sign that everything was okay, everything was done to look after it, right? Was that if heavy rains came again, they had all the ballasts in place. They had all the raised roads and entrances to underground car parks raised so that it would not be flooded, right?
Yeah.
But on a people scale, they weren't really looking at it and say, okay, we have to solve this problem. But what I can say is, at least from a government perspective, is that they've begun to they've made it a priority here as well.
Yep.
And it's becoming, one of the stories we planned to talk about was actually like in the UK, where they've come out and basically said it's the biggest thing, right? I mean, and politically in the UK, it's been viewed as the biggest thing. In the US, the military, the US Defense Department, right? They list climate change actually as one of the highest threats to American security, and that is in the context of everything that they have right now. They internally look at it and go like, this is the big problem, right? But whether or not the average Joe, the person in the street, goes like, yeah, the big enemy is what? It just isn't happening, right? Even though those who know and those who think and those who are spending their time in terms of defense and looking after, security, they say otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really bizarre situation, right? I mean, the US military, it's like that's been 20 years. They've been saying that it's one of the biggest threats. And then you listen to the political discourse and it's bizarre. It's completely opposite. And then Lammy, the foreign foreign minister or whatever he is in the UK, said
Yeah.
it's the biggest risk to the UK, but they don't have any money to pay for things because
Yeah.
the Tories kind of screwed it all up. But it's a bizarre time to be alive, because once you're aware and once you sort of start
Yeah.
putting all the pieces together, I was talking to David and Richard about, will people even have pensions in the future? Because,
Yeah.
the economic implications of all of this, the stock market, people, because I'm in Singapore, I've got all these ads coming at me, or on LinkedIn, and all these people are talking to me. Everyone's excited and talking about this future, and that's not the future that we've got coming. In this country, in Singapore, the government has done an amazing job getting this country ready for climate change. It is so far ahead. It is so far ahead. It's got these massive reservoirs to capture floodwater that have never been needed, but they're there. Right? It's amazing. It doesn't talk about it. It doesn't even, it doesn't brag about it. It's just gotten on and gotten the job done. In Poland, when they lost that dam wall and that whole town city got flooded, right? They're not ready for it. They're not doing anything for it. They're not, so governments who are not getting their countries prepared for the future that we have coming are not serving their people. And I don't know what it's going to. Honestly, I really don't know what it's going to take. A massive event where millions of people die in a wealthy Western country. It's whether it's a heat death, which the numbers of people dying from heat are extreme already, and they're just going to get higher, or a hurricane, or the results of Typhoon Yagi were devastating. Philippines, Vietnam, Myanmar, China, and Thailand, devastating. We have no idea how many people died. They're up in the mountains in these villages that no one knows, right? I don't know what it's going to take.
And the reality is that right now the world is changed to the point right now where, like, for instance, as you say this, as you're talking about this, I mean, there's a good chance that a number of people who follow, who are listening this late into the stream are pretty well informed. I mean, that's a good chance of it. But there's also an equally good chance that anybody who's perhaps watching this right now on YouTube and a playback later on is actually hearing for the first time about those kinds of disasters as well, right? So when we were talking about the different kinds of problems in the world, different kinds of challenges that are being faced, because it's front and center to you, go like, it's obvious why isn't anyone looking at this? Why isn't this a big problem? Whatever it is, the thing is, it's not even coming up, right? And I know this for a fact because I am someone who is interested in stuff like that, but I don't go looking for it. And so when I do the show with you, I'm always learning about something that I had no idea about, right? That's the reality of it. And we're not made that way. We're not designed to go seeking it out and therefore to just educate ourselves. It's not everyone who does that. And so we sometimes can't see why no one does it. And it's very simply because to them it's just not a problem. It's not a problem that they're aware of. They can be convinced of it, but it takes some time to wake up. I mean, I can.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But pulling all these pieces together and sort of, which basically that's all I've been doing. So I'm the freak that does look for the stuff, right? Starting pulling all the pieces together and asking the questions until you can't ask any more questions because there's no more answers. That's kind of the way I've sort of gone about it. And there's so many pieces to this puzzle. No, most people haven't got time for that. They've got to work. They've got to support their kids. They've got to, there's so many things that distract us, right? So I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. So that's where we need our leaders to say, come on, guys, this is the situation we're in, and this is what's required of us.
Yeah.
We need to come together and we need to do it. And this is how we're going to do it. It's not going to be without pain. It can't be without pain. But, Clinton's joined us saying too many ignorant and happy to pull the wool over their eyes. And, absolutely, until you can't. And that's the problem. And that's my fear. Like, do you know why we moved back to Singapore? For many, many reasons. But number one, I needed to get my family into a place that was resilient so that I could keep my children safe. I've been talking about this for a long time. I'm trying to make people aware. Someone said to me the other day, they're thinking of going to Vietnam. I just said, why would you do that now? I love Vietnam. It's an amazing country. It's brilliant. You get a heat
Yeah.
wave in Vietnam and the electricity goes down, you're dead. And it will go down. Just because it hasn't yet, it will, because the infrastructure isn't resilient. So that's why we came back here. I wanted to keep my family safe, and I know I can
Yeah.
here. And that's the sort of stuff I'm thinking about, you know. And all I want to do is encourage people, just think about the world that we're in and the world that's coming at us, and think about, at least for your own sake, think about your family and how you can keep them safe. If you're living in a floodplain, sell your house and get the hell out of there. And if someone's stupid enough to buy that house, that's not your problem. That's their problem. But get out of there. And don't even bother buying another house, because what's the point? Buy a Winnebago and go on a road trip. But you know, really we've got to start thinking about it. It's on our doorstep. It's here, you know. Yeah. Anyway, should we wrap up?
Sure. No, I just think that it's great we got to hear, because I think this moment really kind of encompasses, right? We're looking at the big problems and going like, yep, but we can do something about it. So back to optimistic despair. I think.
Yeah. We've got to keep believing we've got to keep believing that we can do something about it. But it requires a dramatic shift in all of our lives. But we've got to believe we can do it, and stop pretending it's not there, and then just get on with the work. We've just got to get on with it. And we've got to do it really fast, and it's a really big shift. And, you know, you're sort of saying, you know, convenience. Well, we like the plastic and we like the AI and we like all this stuff, but is anyone happy?
Yeah.
Mental health issues are off the scale. Suicide's off the scale. Youth suicide's off the scale. Is anyone really happy? You know, is what we've built feeding our souls? And if you look around the world, for the majority of the world, I'd say it's not. So why don't we make something better? And it's not going to be full of stuff. But, you know, we've got to reconnect with the foundation of life, which is that which sustains us, and that's our planet. And everything that we've built is about disconnecting more and more and more. I think living in Asia, living in the tropics, is a really fascinating part of the world to live in, because you see man-made structures everywhere that have been abandoned, and you watch how quickly nature just comes and takes it over. You know, there's a whole bunch of sort of development graveyards in Phuket, and you know, whether someone's run off with all the money or they just couldn't sell them, and you just watch the forest come and take it over so quickly. And we need to get back in connection with nature. That's the essence of what we need to achieve, and we need to think, well, what does that mean, and how do we do it, and how do we do it gently? Because right now we're looking at an aggressive war path where I'm going to keep what I've got, and you know, screw you, and you can't come here and have what I've got. And we've got to come together and work out how to do it gently. Otherwise, it's not going to be worth it. You know, what's the point? I don't want to live in that future. I don't want my boys to live in that future. I don't want your kids to live in that future, or any kids to live in that future. So we're heading towards a dystopia, and that's going back to, you know, what's going on in Lebanon.
Yeah,
of course, on a rational level, I get it, but it's not going to help.
The thing that we kind of have to manage, I think, in you know, like if you talk about happiness and stuff like that, I do recognize that all these things sort of like line up and say like, oh, things aren't great, but I do feel at the same time, we sometimes spend too much time on being unhappy because we pay attention to what we should be unhappy about, right? And I think not enough to what actually is kind of going right. There are lots of things that are sort of right in the world at the same time, and we can, you know, but it doesn't mean that we have to be irresponsible about it, right? There's responsible consumption, right? I mean, that's really where we probably have to get to, and it'll take a lesson. It'll take something ridiculous like an entire country, you know, like some report one day go like, well, you remember this island? It's gone, right? I mean that. And it has to be dramatic enough for people to go like, oh, right? You know, I mean, that's the kind of thing that we need
New
to
York.
have. Unfortunately, it needs to be like, it needs to be New York enveloped by a global tidal wave caused by unexpectedly large chunk of the you know, the glaciers kind of falling into the ocean at the right time, causing a tidal wave. You know, that sort of thing, and then you know, we go like, Oh yeah, the shit's real, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's what's it's gonna take.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
let's round off on the happy note we try to every time.
All right. What's keeping you distracted?
Well, I just finished the series Dexter. I was telling you the last time around, I was getting a little concerned that I seem to relate most to the main character, who is a psychopath, but he is in reform. So I would think, like, at least he's on the right path. And I'm now watching a series that was out. It was making waves some time ago when it came out on Netflix. I finally got onto it, and it's fun. Altered Carbon. I'm not sure if you've
No.
ever checked out the series, but it's again science fiction. The idea is, what if you could be immortalized in the sense that you have a backup of your life experiences, of your brain and everything, that you could just reinstall into a new clone. So there is a story that's built around a main character who wakes up 250 years after his death,
Mm.
but he's been brought back for a mission. So he technically has been resurrected in this new idea of the world, and it's about wealth, and it's about values at the same time, and it's a bit, a little bit of what Netflix was famous for in the earlier parts of the 2000s, a little bit of skin here and there as well. But yeah,
Mm.
a fun little romp, if you like. And it's funny, we talk about dystopia, right? There is this thing. I think when you look at dystopia, what makes it dystopian is the fact that there is joy and hope in the midst of all the stuff that shouldn't give you any joy or hope.
Mm. Yeah, when I think of dystopia, I think of none of us have clean air to breathe, or
Yeah.
anything green around us, or water that doesn't have to go through processes before you can drink it, so that it's healthy. To me, that's a dystopia. Not hearing bird call. We've got this pond that's full of frogs, and it kept one of my sons awake one night, and I'm like, that's brilliant that we've got a pond full of frogs. Even the NEA have approved it. We don't have to drain it because it's full of frogs, right? And I've seen some hornbills in the area where we live. It's beautiful, and that, to me, a dystopia is not that. It's not having that,
Mm.
especially the air. I think the air is a big one, and clean water. So we're watching a couple of things. So one of them is Jake Gyllenhaal in what's it called? Presumed Innocent. And it's on Apple TV, I think, and it's based on a Harrison Ford movie. And I'm struggling to get through it just because it's just negative. It's ugliness of humans and the consequences of that ugliness of their characters. So trying to get through it, it's brilliantly done. I want to be surrounded by beauty, not ugliness, I suppose, because I fully appreciate how ugly humanity is. I've got no delusions about that. But a series that's just released on Netflix, of course, because Nicole Kidman's in it, is Perfect Couple. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Yep.
Liev Schreiber's her husband. It's got an amazing cast. We ripped through that pretty quick, and it's a murder mystery. But that's a good yarn. If you've got a chance to just sit down and watch that, you'll enjoy it. It's the person who is guilty at the end. You kind of could see it all the way through, but at the same time, you're kind of a little bit surprised that it was them. But it was good. It keeps you going right to the end. So I definitely recommend it.
All right. You just reminded me of one little thing, which we found surprisingly entertaining and engaging as well. So I don't know whether you're into anime, if you watch any kind of animations, but worth a try if you're willing to dip into the sci-fi, and again, sci-fi world. It's called Arcane, and it is basically a TV series that has a short series that came out of the video game League of Legends. So it's really going back a long way. League of Legends was very popular, but so long ago that it totally is uncool right now to play the game. but the series they came out with, Arcane, a limited series, so it doesn't go on forever. Really, really well developed, and it's and again, in terms of which I got reminded because you talked about beauty. It's some of the most beautiful animation that you've seen, but the theme may not be as beautiful as you might hope it would be. But so yeah,
Yeah, I'll give it a go.
it's worth a dip. Yeah, I think the boys will enjoy it. You can put them onto it as well.
Yeah, I don't know. They like their gore and war. Keith said dystopia is the death of dreams, and I totally agree with that. And then Clinton said Vikings on Netflix. So I've watched a couple of seasons on Vikings. I do like the Viking stories. I've watched lots of different variations of it. So yeah. But anyway, we'll head off. So thanks, Keith and Clinton, for both jumping in and commenting. It's always great to know someone's there. And good chat, Joe.
Yeah,
Good
you
chat.
take care, man.
Yeah.
And welcome, and glad to have you in the same time zone as we are.
Yeah, no, we just need to be in the same room at the same time. Always hard, right? All right, we'll see you guys in. Actually, we're going to have a few weeks off. I've got to go and spend some time with some family and friends. So I can't remember the date of the show, but we'll be back soon and we'll let you know. All right.
Right. Thanks for being with us.
Cheers.